When we were speaking about our collaboration in our life in Terras do Sol, lands of the sun, we were referring to a work with the kingdoms there, a work with the land, with the water, with the plants, with the animals. And it would be very opportune if we could distinguish the difference of value and the difference of vibration if we deal with this, guided only by our minds, by our ideas, our positive ideas, or if we are dealing with this with inspiration, with the guidance of our souls, or we have begun to deal with this moved by a higher energy, an energy of the monad. And these three levels, we can work with them in this experience in Terras do Sol, lands of the sun. Here it is about our having the intention of collaborating with nature at first, this nature that we know, without interfering in their designs, without interfering in the signs that they give us, and without interfering in those forces that work for it, which we call elemental forces. These forces in nature, we know that they act in the ground, in water, in the air, in fire, and they are activated by a power that does not belong to them. They are led, they are conducted, they are activated. So when something is happening in the ground, or when something is happening in the water, we should perceive what is happening and then connect ourselves with our souls, with our inner self, because then a bridge is formed from our inner self to those powers, those forces that are leading, conducting these elements. This is the beginning of the work here. Here, we are not supposed to begin working with these things, dealing directly with the elementals, as they used to do 30 or 40 years ago in some places that used to cultivate nature and respect nature. And the sensitives would have contact with the devas, some would have contacts with salamandras and so on. The work here is not this. We don't deal with this directly. This is a work that happens, that does happen through the emotional, the astral plane, the mental plane. And it is partnership work still. It is a work in collaboration with these beings. But in this sort of collaboration, when we act directly with these elemental beings or these devas who work in nature, when we act directly with them, we run the risk of interfering in their karma and also interfering in their work in such a way that we don't have to work with this in this way. Here, for us to enter into collaboration with nature, we don't have to enter this directly. We have to offer this intention. We have to offer this collaboration to the one who addresses everything, and try to find a union, to try to get a union, ever greater approximation to our souls. Because the soul communicates with the forces that move these elemental beings. So from our souls will come an inspiration on how to deal with the land, or how to deal with the dirt, how to deal with the water, or any element of any kingdom. So here, consecration of life is necessary, because life is consecrated to a higher will, and everything is done through this higher will. And this is very important for us to train, because the limits between your interfering and your collaboration, your interference and your collaboration with nature, these limits are very delicate. And we can learn this in daily life. We can learn this in the planting sector. We can learn this in the maintenance sector, when we are dealing with these things, when we are working in these sectors. And this will help us very much, indirectly, to do the same with people, the same with creatures, because the process is the same. So if we are going to collaborate with human beings directly, you don't know what you are dealing with there, because you don't know their destiny, their karma. So if you do this directly, this could completely change the configuration of a relationship. On the other hand, if you always look for your inner nuclei, if you always look for your soul, for your inner self, you are going to then be inspired to do or help in that which you are supposed to help, without interfering, without entering something that you don't know, as could be their destiny, or that which is their process, the rhythm of their process. So that which we already know regarding people, the same thing is done with nature. The same thing is done with plants and everything else. With nature, this is very delicate, because among these natural elements that build and collaborate with nature, there are those that are artificial, that are not natural. There are elements building in nature which are not authentic. They are forces that have been built by human beings' thought, that have been built by other things that move in the astral or mental planes. So as we cannot distinguish these things, we don't know which sort of work is taking place there, in a plant or a mineral or water or the dirt. We don't know what sort of element is building that, in such a way that this intention and practice of ours, of always going within and trying to reach an inner aspiration to deal with this, because then we know that the soul is in contact with the authentic forces of these elements. This is something we should have within our consciousness. We should have this very clear. We already have conditions that this work of ours with nature may be regulated by the soul. We have conditions for this. We have means for this. Because the soul here has already been maintaining many beings on the spiritual path for enough time, and upon them it has a certain control, it has contact with them. So here it is possible, if we dedicate to this, if we don't forget this, here it is already possible for us, or it's now possible for us to be collaborating with nature without interfering. And we, in the group, in two sectors, both in the planting sectors as well as in the assistance central, because these things are together when they are related to work, because both sectors live of nature, and both sectors we have souls that are connected with these things, souls that have sensibility to deal with these things. Here it is a matter of our always being respecting others' vision, because here we have all the elements to act correctly here, incarnated souls. But we need to respect others' vision, we need to respect others' experience, mainly when we deal with nature. That is, we have beings in the planting sector, as well as we have beings in the assistance central, who have possibility of being inspired to do correct things. So when we work in these two sectors, it's good for us to never forget that we are in a group, and that for different people, for different members of the sector, there could come some indication. This is precisely the moment we are going through, both in planting as well as in the assistance central, when the assistance central in dealing with plants directly. If this here, at this moment, is respected, and if this procedure is assumed, we will begin to move on to another sector, state. And in lands of the sun, terras do sol, we have energy to be in this other state on the daily life. That is, to begin to recognize and work not only with nature and the laws of nature and the elementals that work with nature, but also of beginning to perceive and know laws of the supernature and the movements of supernature. This here in Figueira does not begin in the lands of the sun, terras do sol. This is where this can be developed. In Figueira, this is already taking place in other areas of perceiving certain things of supernature. And we have a sharing about this here that is going to clarify what is being said. Because the elementals, the devils, and the forces that work with nature, they work with the construction of forms. They work with fructification. They work with everything that is creation in form, visible, natural, that which we can see. But when we begin to have contact with supernature, then we begin then to collaborate not only with form, not only with the manifestation of things, but we begin to collaborate with internal evolution of the kingdoms, the inner evolution of species. And here we have a very typical sharing about this that is being said. And a person who was in silence together with other people in a circle in the house of the Casa do Pátio, the area of, because this internal area of Casa do Pátio is an area that gives itself for these contacts with Supernature. And being there in silence, in circle, I began to perceive a very special work in my bodies, which was being carried out by perfumes. Right after, in one of the gardens of the pátio, the Casa do Pátio, I saw a green plant with long leaves that became thinner. This was not physical, obviously. The lowest part of this plant was naturally luminous, as if its trunk radiated a natural light. So another one emerged in another garden that also presented light in its... They were luminous plants in the flower beds. They were very... And then an image of a plant in the air emerged, in which something happened that I could call surgery, because I cannot find another word to describe what I was seeing. It was the surgery that was happening in the internal part of the plant that was registered in me. No one was doing this surgery. You see, there was no being working. There was a power force working there. No one was doing a surgery. It was something that was happening with the plant kingdom itself. There was a movement in the center of the plant that I could call something white, and that transmitted this impression that there was a surgery there. This picture remained a while in my visual screen, and it was clear that something was happening, very important things were happening or could happen for the plant kingdom due to the situation of this place, and this should be profoundly recognized by all of us so that we could always collaborate, because this would be a work here. This would be a service here in such a way that Figueira has this activity of Supernature incorporated. This is incorporated here. That is, in the spiritual center, the spiritual center can work as a sort of laboratory for this Supernature to work. Of course, this Supernature is going to work with these things, whatever it wants in the abstract planes. But if in an area we have an etheric place like this that exists in this internal part of Casa do Pátio, if we have an etheric environment like this, where these things, these facts can happen naturally, where there is an energy, a state, a vibration, where these facts can take place, then there the first experiments will be carried there as if it were a lab, and then it's going to move on to higher scales in Terras do Sol, lands of the sun. So we can collaborate with this, not only being Terras do Sol, but we can collaborate with this whatever we are. We need to be connected with this work, with these forces, these powers. Now, what happened in Casa do Pátio and this person was aware of, this is another stage of the work with these forces of nature, because here is already a contact that does not take place with the soul. Here, this needs a certain fluency of the monad, because then it is the monad that enters in contact with these powers of supernature. So when it is about nature, it's through the soul. So, and when it's related to supernature, that is the creation of new species, when it is about transmuting certain species, this is with supernature, and this is on the level of the monad. So planting here and assistance center or attendance center here is dealing with this, with these levels of life. It is dealing with these kingdoms. And here it is about our always having this present, because this is there, this is taking place. And as we work with the magnetism in us, purity of intentions, silence, order, cleanliness, all of this on the physical plane and also mental plane and also emotional plane, mainly in the mental emotional, this is going to gradually be introduced into the work. This is going to become part of the tasks. And of course, it is necessary for a certain number of the individuals to conceive this and to have faith in this, because no one can prove these things unless the individual can begin to experience these. And when they don't know it directly, they go through faith. So here, it is necessary that those who go through faith and those who feel the vibration of these things, who feel the call to work with these things, here it would be necessary to be devotee to these processes, to really be in contact with their own inner being, their own higher being, and in contact with more profound levels, depending on the level when people are concentrated within their own beings. But this would be a moment of devotion to all these practices, a devotion to all the ceremonial that takes place in nature and supernature. So in Terras do Sol, we have this open, and not only with the plants, but also with the land, and also with the dirt, and also with the water. And we are supposed to be before this as if we were in a temple and not a farm exploiting the land, or in a community dealing with people living together. We would have to transcend these modalities of being life and really meet or gradually identify ourselves more and more each time with this tempered state that spiritual center has and presents. And you can notice this through the response that nature gives inside of this work. We would have to be here with an attitude that is already transformed, with an attitude that is already transmuted. I don't know if you have noticed that before this week, every time we entered this room, it was organized and clean. And I don't know if you have noticed that since some days ago we enter here and there is a different alignment. Something was established which was not so well established. this took place since last week to this week. And of course, this is a response to that which we will be doing on the inner planes. This is a response to that which will be taking place on our inner planes, of options that we will be doing on our inner planes. Regarding the theme of today, we can already recognize that we are not only planting and dealing with plants, taking care of plants and getting products for eating. We are also working with the activities of nature in plants. We are perceiving, we are collaborating in the activities of supernature in plants, according to the sharings that we have had, we have been doing, we have been receiving. And this is very important from the karmic standpoint for the planet, because if we collaborate with the guides of these kingdoms, with the work that has to be carried out within these species, plant and mineral kingdoms, if we collaborate with these guides, the gardeners of the space who work with the introduction of the genetic code in humanity, will have a greater field of work, and they will find more human beings in which to work on the new genetic code. This part of humanity that is already conscious of this work with the kingdoms, this part of humanity, if it is conscious of this and collaborates with individualization in these kingdoms, or in transmutation of the species in these kingdoms, karmically, this authorizes the gardeners of the space to work on more human beings in the new genetic code. So it is as if we had already been served by the gardeners of the space, and now it is up to us to collaborate to help the guides of other kingdoms to do the corresponding work in those kingdoms. And there should be animals becoming individualized. There should be plants in which the mental germ is being stimulated. And all of this is due to us, members of the spiritual center, to work on this. We are supposed to work in this field of service. And areas like this, of the garden, of Casa do Pátio's garden, areas that correspond to this, there are areas like this in other places of Figueira. Now, these are not things we are going to discover with radiesthesia or things we are going to search for mentally. These are things that we recognize, that we find internally, interiorly, intuitively, and that we are really going to perceive where we are only after a long time. And no one says in this field, go to work there, because there are the guides of the kingdoms. This is the point. This doesn't exist like this. If you are in this attunement, if you are consecrated to service and to a higher will, so here you are going to gradually be unconsciously led to things. You are going to be gradually, unconsciously led to places, and then you will receive many tests, because sometimes you receive a task that you never expected, and that task that you never expected, that is the contrary of everything you have ever imagined, the opposite of everything you wanted. This is the entrance doorway in your inner work for you to find these things, for you to find these delicate things. And of course, you are only going to know that you are within this, you are only going to know you are working with this when at a certain point you perceive it internally, you see internally, as this person saw it in Casa do Pátio. And it's after you are in there that you receive the awareness until a certain point of what is happening. This is included in the tasks of Terras do Sol's task, together with the action of supernatural laws, as it could be the control of rain, which human beings are not supposed to do, the control of winds. Human beings don't know how to do this either. Climate generally, or what the movement of waters, what happens as transmutation of the water in the telluric movements, all of this is included in this sort of program or schedule that has been given to us to work, which has been given to us for us to assume. And as we were saying, that contemplative life is still not, but it will be one day somewhere, or who knows, here, with other beings who will come later on. It is always good for us to be humble. It is always good for us to follow this basic law of sitting at the last place. So if we are in charge of these things, it is good, always good for us to know that this is not for us. So we sit at the last place, and we are not the ones who are going to do this, who are in charge. We do what we can, but without judging us as being better than anyone. I don't know if I'm clear. Otherwise, a poison enters here which dissolves everything. And then we are doing common agriculture, and we are working in an agriculture cooperative. But I'm not saying this for us to be modest and think something different. I'm just reminding us that this is a law, that when you enter a place, there are many rows of chairs. They should sit at the last row, the last place. Oh, I'm charging this. I'm the one who knows the least, who is going to get there the least. And it's true, because the first ones who are openly called for certain things, they offer themselves as souls and monads. They are there. They are serving as an experience for the energy. So, in such a way, when you have a call or an invitation, the first thing that we do is to say, the last place, back there, I am the last one. Otherwise, all of this is harmed. You see, this person who had this contact in the yard of Casa do Pátio is one of the person of the group who sees in herself all her defects naturally, and we have to show her qualities. So you see how these things are. Is the contrary of saying, I'm this one, the one. This is a fact that perhaps could be useful for us and is very much inside of that law. And there are people who do this and who are naturally humble, and there are other people who need to do a certain effort to redimension themselves and enter that condition of true collaborators of the plan. Because if you are a collaborator of the plan, what are you? The great one is the plan, it's not you. You are just a collaborator of the plan and nothing else. If the plan doesn't show itself to you, we don't even know about the plan. So what are you? What are we? This is very delicate. And this is the basic condition for us to enter these works. This is the basic condition so that something of a certain value, something in tune with the evolutionary plan and evolution of these kingdoms, can begin to happen in such a way that we have to be very careful when dealing with the Terras do Sol, because this is a field of experiments, it's a service field, but it's also a testing field for us. And the thought of today says, be steady in the face of the attacks, and do not doubt a moment about the help and presence of the hierarchy who accompany each one of your steps. Be steady before the attacks, because the attacks happen within us. And it's enough that we know these things, that the attacks begin because the other part of our nature begins to combat that which is supposed to be. But then, if we don't doubt, not even for an instant, if we really have an active faith, if we don't forget this faith that is within each one of us, we will be accompanied on our steps. This is very important for us not to be taking steps by ourselves, but for us to be accompanied. So behind these plantings, behind the search for these medicines, behind all these activities, there are many other things happening. And as at this moment we are all incarnated here, we have also to see the physical part of all these things. But within this temple, it's not only about physical things only. So we have news that just like there are transformations of the human kingdom on earth, there will also be a transformation of other kingdoms that will be here on this planet. And the whole transition through the human kingdom is going, these other kingdoms are also going through. And as the human kingdom here is officially the most conscious, so the human kingdom is supposed to collaborate in the transition of others. And this is a matter of quality of work, not a matter of quantity, because humanity does not even dream about these things. But what is done with quality, even if it's in the least amount, this is very significant, very precious for the evolutionary plan. Very dear to the one life. It is about each one trying to do the best, as good the best possible, and always be offering the work to their own inner self, always offering everything they are doing, giving everything they are doing, and always being available to any change.